Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers, author and teacher. I have Prudence Todd on today. Prudence, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So I live in Queensland, Australia. It's on the east coast of Australia. It's 6 a.m. in the morning here. And I am a mama to 4 children. 2 of them are adults now and 2 are teenagers, and been with the same legend of a man for about 26 years now. And what I do for work is I'm a holistic pelvic wellness practitioner, and I help women to integrate the experiences of womanhood in their lives. So really specializing in women reclaiming the joy of womanhood after childbirth is something that I'm really passionate about, and how pelvic health is so important as a way to do that for women. And that's been a really interesting journey, especially I have a daughter and 3 boys. So all of the children have learned a lot about health and women and family and birth. I used to be a midwife and had all my babies at home. So there's a lot of very open discussion in our family in and around our home.
So what does it involve doing holistic healing on pelvic area?
Yeah, absolutely. I help women to integrate different things that they've been through that may be challenging. So I think if we look at the different rites of passage that people go through, specifically for women, it would be in and around menstruation. So moving from, a young woman into that part of her life, or later on in life, moving from maiden to mother through the portal of birth. Sometimes, actually, it's 1 in 3 women report going through birth trauma, experiencing birth as traumatic in some way. So helping women to integrate that experience, that trauma in her life, and learn how to care for it and love it and carry that in her life so that it's no longer jarring for her and her body, but she can actually access the wisdom in and around that experience. And then also later on in life, moving into menopause. This is also a time of life where we rely heavily on external reinforcements. So through, as a young woman, through birth and through menopause, we as women are taught that all the answers to what we experience are on the outside. So we go to the doctors, we trust in the medical system, we rely on pills or fixing the problem, particularly through intervention in birth, or pills for, pain in menstruation, or pills for I'm not feeling right as we go into menopause. And then all the different life experiences that are interwoven through that. So there's a really big listening piece for me in listening to a woman's journey and helping her actually come home to her own intuition. And that's been a massive piece in my life, because having babies at home, and even the way that I've mothered my children, there's a huge intuition piece. And I think that all of humanity really could turn to their own trusting themselves more and less of an external reinforcement. There's nothing wrong with doctors and going and seeing people for that. But I think that there's a huge missing for us as humans to really trust what's inside of us and trust what's guiding us. And so that can look like me just jumping on a session like this, talking with women and listening to their story and helping them to integrate that story through emotional release work, deep compassion, understanding her own journey and making sense of it. Also, a lot of pelvic floor concepts and tools to help her if she's, because the thing is, when we carry stuff in the body has a response. I'm sure you're familiar with the body showing up as dis-ease in the body when we carry things over a period of time. And so for the human body, through the pelvic floor, that rests at the bottom of the torso. So everything that we feel, all the heaviness of the organs, rests down on the pelvic floor. And so we end up with these symptoms that show up for us, like, you know, leaking, pain, all of those different things. So sometimes there's actually a physical component to helping her release that, engage that, help with congestion in that area so that we relieve pain or help numbness to shift and everything functions better again. So there's a real emotional and physical component to that whole journey for a woman in what I do.
So like with the emotional release and compassion, that's kind of similar to like people who work with releasing trauma in your life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few different ways that I do that, but most of it is guided from my own personal experience. Growing up as a mum of 4, I had depression twice after my second and my fourth babies. And it lasted for quite some time in spite of doing a lot of different things to try and heal that. And it led to about 10 years ago, my husband and I, we would, you know, I was just so sensitive and so learning how to be in my depressed body as a mom and looking after 4 children and just feeling stretched and not coping. And my husband not knowing really how to support a woman with depression and work and all the things that he was trying to carry in his life with a little or big family of 4 children who were little. And we would get into arguments a lot, and those arguments would show up in front of the children. And 10 years ago, I remember this pivotal moment where we had an argument in the kitchen. We'd been going at it for quite some time, over, you know, an hour or so, and just arguing backwards and forwards, and really not feeling seen and heard in what the message I was trying to convey to him. And there's no right or wrong or good or bad. It just is what it is. And he came across the kitchen to me, and he just went to hug me, and I was filled with my own rage at not feeling heard by him, and I pushed him away from me. And at that moment, we both realized that our 8-year-old son was standing there and witnessed that. And there was a huge impact for that in my husband. And he decided that he would go away for a couple of weeks. He just decided to go away in the moment. Then he decided it would be a couple of weeks for him to really decide what needed to happen, because we didn't want this happening in our relationship, and we certainly didn't want it happening in front of the children anymore. And the constant yelling and the rage was really unhealthy for our family. And so the 2 weeks, during that 2 weeks, we both actually decided that we would find a counsellor, and we found the same one and came back to each other and were like, what do you think about this person? And when we started with her, we actually continued with her, but not counselling together. We did our own counselling separately. We had one session together, and that lasted for 10 months, and he didn't come home for 12 months. And it was a real time of healing for us as human beings, not with an agenda to fix the relationship, but to heal ourselves as human beings with no actual idea of or agenda of what's happening with our relationship. We just knew that we couldn't be in a relationship until we were healed in and around what was showing up for us all the time. So yeah, over that period of time, we slowly made our way back together. We started again. There was a real raw time for about 3 or 4 months, and then we started dating again and just started the whole process again. And during that time, I learned a technique in and around really connecting with myself and holding myself with a series of questions that really helps me to see where I'm at, and also connects to different parts of myself and different ages. And I've used that my whole life since then, and I've taught it to my daughter. My sons think it's a little bit woo-woo and out there, but my 21-year-old daughter uses it in her life all the time. And it's fascinating to see her relationship with her boyfriend and partner and how mature they are in their communication. It's inspiring to see her learn that technique at such a young age and how it's changed her life.
You're listening to the Inspire Me with Jay podcast. Please do like and subscribe to the channel, bringing hope and inspiration to the world.
What is the technique?
Yeah, so when I learned it, I found a teddy. It's about really being able to connect to the inner child, and I found a teddy that resembled my inner self. And I made that teddy resemble myself with a scarf. It was something that reflected me. And as time has gone on, it doesn't have to be a teddy. It could be a pillow, or now I actually use the technique just driving in the car because it's so easeful for me to do. But at first, it's really about being able to drop in and really connect with self. And firstly, just breathing and allowing your body to be with your body, telling your body that, you're here with your body. And that can be one of the most difficult things for people, is actually just to drop in and be here right now, not with our thoughts. And then the first question I would ask myself is, how old are you right now? And just listening to the response. And I think the biggest part of this is actually learning how to trust what shows up. And this has been quite easeful for me. It's something I've always done in my life. I've been a body talk practitioner. I've used the emotion code. I don't know if you know of that book. And even just birthing my children at home. The emotion code was written for the general community and population to be able to use muscle testing to have answers to questions that they had about their body, and to follow a protocol and be able to find out and heal issues that they were struggling with in their body. And so I've used that, but asking the question, how old are you? And so, your 5-year-old self might pop up, and so just really being present to your 5-year-old self and loving that person. You might ask them, where are you right now? And listening for the response. So some people are like, well, how do I know if the answer's right? The answer can't be right or wrong. It just is what it is. And I think it's about learning how to drop out of questioning every single thing that pops up and just trusting what comes. And so as I facilitate these questions with people, it's really interesting to see them go on a journey with themselves, and then asking yourself, what are you feeling right now? What is it that's there for you? And listening, not asking too many questions, not being too wordy. And quite often the response and this dialogue that starts to go backwards and forwards is more easeful and less stressful and more deeply connecting than thinking about the problem in our heads. So it really cuts through, and you get to that very deep part of yourself that's like, well, I'm feeling really angry. And it's not about trying to fix the anger. It's about talking about the anger. How can I support you with that right now? What is it that you need of me? And listening and being still and being quiet. I think these techniques of doing that with ourselves gives us strength and confidence to do that outside of ourselves, particularly when, every single time. I mean, I do this weekly, if not daily, with difficult things that show up in my life. And I just notice a sensation in my body. And there's always something different. It's like a fascinating adventure and journey every single time. It's like, oh my gosh, look at that. Like that part of you still is anchored in the body in that experience at that time of your life and still wants to be seen and heard around that particular issue. So asking, how can I support and love you? What is it that you need of me? Being quiet and listening. And sometimes our body asks for things that maybe we can support and maybe we can't. And I think being honest with ourselves is a really, really important component of the dialogue because, I know there's been instances with women, and I probably learned this over the years, where I say to them, is that something you feel like you can give yourself? And they're actually in quite a panic mode. It's like, I don't feel strong enough to give that to myself, or I don't have the time, or I don't know how. And I'm like, well, just share that with yourself and see what comes out of that. And so starting to have this real honest dialogue with yourself, saying the thing, I don't know if I can meet you in that. Like, what would it be like if in our relationships around us, we could be that honest? And so starting to share honestly with ourselves and saying, I don't know if I can support you in that right now. Perhaps I could on the weekend, or perhaps I can in this capacity, and listening for the response. And quite often there's a deep sense of support and holding that starts to develop between you and that inner person. And as that trust and that relationship starts to develop, the stress and tension in our body starts to dissolve and our nervous system starts to relax because we feel deeply held with this conversation that's going on in our body. And it can be really beautiful. Often women that I work with will say, I feel like bricks have been removed from my body, or I've never felt that sense of deep compassion with myself. I've done compassionate work before, but I've never felt this before. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting and beautiful journey to go on. I hope that's made sense.
Yeah, so like you listen to your inner self, and I mean, with some of the things that would say that you're wondering whether can I do that or not, would it be something like I need a half hour or an hour each day for me time to decompress? Maybe it could be meditation. Maybe it could just be going and sitting somewhere and reading a book. Or is that what you're talking about, kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. So it may be that descript. It may not be that descript. But when that request comes, actually looking within and feeling what's the nervous system doing in my body right now. Am I feeling easeful about offering this back to myself, or am I feeling stressed by that? What do I need to do within myself that this could feel easeful? And so I think that also comes from one, being honest to ourselves, but also being integral to ourselves. And when we commit to ourselves and follow through, our body rests in the safety of knowing that we are holding ourselves and we can trust ourselves. So when your body might say, I need you to decompress for half an hour each day, just sitting with that and feeling that in your body, and maybe just feeling into what part of the day would that work for you? What would that look like for you? Maybe asking yourself that question. And if it feels right, saying, I can totally commit to that. Or I can't commit to doing that every day, but I can commit to doing that every other day, or every morning, or on the weekends I can take half hour out and go for a bushwalk in the forest. And having that conversation with yourself just like that, whether it's half an hour to decompress, or it could be right in this moment. Sometimes I've checked in and it's like, what do you need right now? I just need you to go and have a shower and breathe. Like it could be something really practical. And I think when we feel really stressed in our body, particularly either in a moment or about something that's happened in our lives, and we ruminate over it over and over again in our bodies, there can be a sense of, I don't know how to fix this. And we're trying to come up with a solution in our head. And when we drop down below that into our body can have a very direct, simple request that we haven't thought of because we're in our head. So it could be, I just need you to go out and stand on the grass right now. And so just doing that, or I need you to have a sleep, or I need you to just hold the pillow and sit here and rock and cry. So it could be so simple. And sometimes I think it's surprisingly simple what our body needs to move through these periods of stress in our bodies.
Well, do you have like certain practices you do every day to kind of connect? Like, do you meditate or do you journal? What are some of the things you like to do?
Yeah, I mix and change. So I don't have something that I do every single day. So some of the things that I do is definitely, actually, I do write every single day. It's a practice that I have never been good at. I'm really proud to say that I'm proud in myself that this is something that my body asked for recently. And I've always been like, oh, I hate journaling. I don't like journaling, or I'm not very good at the consistency, and I would self-loathe about the consistency. I always drop off and I start something and I don't do it. And then I made this commitment to myself that I'm just going to start today. And so every day I write about how grateful I am about my life right now, about half a page. And then I write how grateful I am about the things that haven't happened yet, that I want to come to fruition. I write about half a page about that. And that really opens up my heart to the things that I want to bring into my life, and helps me to feel the excitement of and the joy of those things. And then I also write the things that I've done today that I just feel are wins in my life. And that could be as simple as making dinner for the children, or, the business things that I've wanted to put in place, or some conversation that I've had with someone. And then I also write what I would love to achieve tomorrow. So that's the journaling component. My body work, I do fascia release mostly every day in my life. And I'm also a Pilates instructor. So I'm doing strength work, and the fascia release is really important in being able to release emotional congestion in the fascia in the body. And it's so, so powerful for all different kinds of things that we feel in our bodies that show up through emotional stress, like headaches, digestive issues, depression. It's just been so profoundly life-changing for me. And I learned the fascia release technique that I use through Human Garage. I don't know if you know of Human Garage, but I came across them. During COVID, Gary, who is the founder of that, decided that he wanted to, after years and years and years of running a clinic, helping thousands of people, athletes, all different types of people with body pain, he decided that he wanted to teach people how to heal themselves. And so watching that develop, there's now an app that everything is free. It's the most incredible resource. It's all free. You can just look up the app. It's called Human Garage. You can download it on your phone. You can find him on YouTube. And there's just tons of resources and a whole program that you can move through to actually really nourish yourself as a human being. And the community is really, really beautiful and supportive. So I've learned that for myself. And I also integrate a lot of those specifically for prolapse and leaking and issues that women might go through after childbirth, cesarean section, into my practice as well with women. So fascia release, journaling, definitely stillness, sitting with a candle and just watching fire flicker is a beautiful meditation for me. I love to be in silence rather than listening to someone talking. Sitting and watching the world go by is one of my most relaxing things, watching humanity and feeling my heart just open with compassion to different people that I watch down the street. They're probably the biggest things that I love to do. Yeah.
I spent several years of my life stressed, anxious, and depressed. I needed to find something that would make my life work. For me, that was meditation. With meditation, I found the peace of mind that I was looking for. I found the happiness, and I found a way to improve every area of my life, my emotional life, my spiritual life, my relationships. I was able to discover things about myself. I can give you the tools to meditate. I will walk you through the process and hold your hand. Whether you're a beginner to meditation who's never meditated, or whether you're someone who's tried meditation and it just never seemed to work, we can make it work. Meditation is something that everyone can do, and I can show you how. Check out my course on meditation. So, like, what does is it push and release? What do you do specifically to do that?
For muscle testing, do you mean?
Yeah, is it like you focus on a part of the body and you kind of push mentally and then release it, or
Or
how
do
does
you
that
mean the
work?
fascia release?
Yeah.
Yeah. The fascia release is founded on a few different principles. One is breath and moving the breath around the body, because moving the breath around the body through pinning a certain part of the body, locking it in, and then twisting the fascia, because the fascia is connected from the top of our head all the way through to our toes, and it connects our blood vessels, our bones, our muscles, ligaments, all of the nervous system. It's like cling wrap that runs through everything. It touches everything, and it's extremely sensitive, like our skin, and it holds emotion. And as our body gets stuck through the fascia, we don't move as well. And so that impacts different parts of our body. And we start to get tight and sore and congested, and our organs don't rest in the most optimal position. We don't breathe as well. So it's about holding a particular twist or movement and then breathing big, deep breaths in through the nose, in through the mouth, mixing up the breath and taking that breath to different parts of the body and allowing the body to feel safe and unlock and release in that position while you take those 6 deep breaths. And there's a whole series of movements that you can do. There's a daily reset you can do that takes about 10 minutes. There's like jaw releases. There's releases for around the ears that will help with headaches. There's releases for the hips, which open up the hips and help the digestive organs to sit more comfortably in the belly and just be more functional. There's organ resets that just help our organs function better, which also helps us sleep. If I'm struggling to go to sleep, or I wake up and I can't get back to sleep, I'll get up and do an organ reset, because our organs are like filtering and resetting themselves through the night. So when we do the fascia release around the organs, it's really, really helpful. Often I'll just go straight back to sleep after doing that.
Well, it's kind of similar to like a body scan. Like in meditation, you'll start from head and you'll just work your way down to your toes, and you kind of like feel the tension and then you release. And sometimes you'll imagine like white light going to that area, kind of healing it. It's kind of like that.
Absolutely. With a physical kind of stretch and movement component connected with it. Yeah.
Well, and so gratitude is a big part of healing and a big part of keeping yourself in a good state of well-being.
Yeah, I cannot say how much gratitude has changed my life in regards to really, really heavy times in my life. I remember when I was going through depression, just how dark some of the days would be. I remember as a young mum just, hanging the clothes on the line and just looking up to the sky and feeling so grateful for life. And I probably at the time wasn't addressing why I was depressed, but those moments kept me. I remember getting up at a different time in my life with my fourth baby as a newborn, not much sleep on board. And the first thing I chose to do was to take him in my arms and walk outside and just, even though he couldn't speak, I would speak to him 10 things that I was grateful for as I saw them in the day. So I'd say, oh, look at the sky. I'm so grateful for the sky. Look at the birds. I'm so grateful for the birds. And we'd go through 10 things every morning. It just anchors a vibration in your heart that carries you through your day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So are most of the people you work with in person, or you work with people online too?
Yeah, absolutely. Work with people online. The work is very powerful. I probably first realized that I could work distance with people through emotional release work with my husband. He was working away at the mines and he had a lot of body pain, and he said, babe, can you do some of that work on me? And so I started to do it with him 8 hours away, and it started to show me how much energetics are not just in body. The hands-on approach is also powerful in a different way, but he would leave here to drive to the mines, could hardly walk, and I would work on his body energetically from a distance as he drove to the mines, and he would get out at the other end without that body pain. And so I started to integrate the emotional release work into distance sessions online. But I also do see people in person, and I love working with women's bodies and helping them to reconnect to their bodies, to ease body pain, scar pain. There's a huge bodywork component to the work that I do, but online work is really, really amazing as well. I love both so much. Yeah.
So it's sort of a form of emotional, it's a form of energy healing.
Mm. Yeah, and I don't like to think of myself as the healer. I like to think of myself as the facilitator to somebody else's healing, giving them the space and the guidance to be able to connect to the parts of themselves, the experiences within themselves that perhaps they don't know how to connect to because it feels too overwhelming. It doesn't feel safe. Their nervous system feels fraught at even the idea of connecting to that part of themselves that just, if I open the lid on this, perhaps I don't know what will happen. And so I just see myself as that safe anchor for them to start to unpack some of the things, not necessarily through talking. Yes, I think that fierce listening is a very, very important component to what I offer people, helping people to feel safe, but also being able to do the emotional release work means that people don't necessarily have to even share their story with me. We can connect straight into the part that they need to heal through just muscle testing and me guiding them to connect to that themselves. So when I'm working with women, women and people, even with my husband, firstly, it's about asking their body whether they actually are going to give me permission to work with them. Their body will tell me, and I can muscle test that. And I there's the other aspect of that is that it's also understanding that we will only go as far as what their body will allow, and it's very, very safe and nurturing process to go through. Yeah.
Well, like when you do this emotional release on someone else, are you kind of in a sort of almost meditative state yourself?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I've always been from a young child, I've been very prayerful. And, if anything's big or feeling like it's a lot, having to show up for something. I remember when I was 16 and, different things in my life as a young person and needing to show up either to do a speech or an assignment or a talk or, things that just felt big for me. I just didn't know how I was going to do it or run a race, or I just remember just closing my eyes and finding that stillness within myself. And before I'm with any person, there's a process of, it's nearly like I empty myself. There's a sense of connecting to a divine or a nothingness, because I want to be able to feel energetically what the person needs the most. And so it's really, really interesting. I've had 2 instances where I've been working with someone, and so when I'm working with someone, I'm literally muscle testing, asking the questions about what they're sharing with me, and I'm getting a strong no or a release is a yes. And there's been some times where I've been working and it just doesn't make sense, and I feel that in my body. It's not, this is not making sense, or the answers aren't making sense. It's like, this isn't making sense. I feel that. And another energy has somehow dropped into the session. And so being really sensitive to that in my body and being able to feel that in my body, so then I have to clear that energy. I have to just come back to the person. And the person doesn't know anything about what's going on with that for me, but it's really about being a clear vessel in myself and being able to get very clear answers for them. And then whatever I'm asking and receiving those answers, I relay that to the person. And then I let them know when it's cleared. So as I clear it, we run the meridian down the back of the body. So I run the meridian that clears that emotion, and I let them know that it's cleared. But when I'm going through that process, it's really a process of, and this is all in the emotion code. And this is the reason I use this. I still draw on some of my body talk practitioner, which is like kinesiology, but different. I don't know if you know much about kinesiology, but I'm drawing on what is the priority question here. So I start with, we might have had a little chat before. I might ask, what's the most important thing that wants to be held here? And I will wait, and that will come, and then I'll see if that's what's real. And then I'll let them know that, okay, so what we've talked about, this is what wants to be addressed today. And then I'll start to ask, what's the emotion that's resting in this issue? And I just work through a little emotion protocol, and it might be that grief pops up. Okay, is this grief current? Is it from the past? And I'm just muscle testing the whole time. Okay, it's from the past. So I might look at, was this pre-birth? Was it 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 5 to 15, like 10 to 15? I'll just run through. It's a really quick process in my body. And it might be like, okay, it's something that happened at 18. And I start to look at a deeper context of that grief and that what they were feeling at that time, what was happening in their life at that time. And sometimes the body thinks it's important to know what was happening, and sometimes it doesn't. It just needs to clear the emotion. And so I always say to the person, if there's something that you're feeling that this makes sense to you that you want to talk about, you can feel free to talk to me about it. But if you don't have to either. That's not a requirement of the process to release that emotion. So it's really interesting to hear what people experience and how things start to change and how they feel. And then I also combine that emotional release work with that compassionate dialogue that we were talking about earlier, is connecting in with themselves so that they feel really supported after the session.
Have you ever wanted to learn to meditate? Check out my book, Meditation for Everyone: How to Quickly Have a More Peaceful, Mindful, and Fulfilled Life, and support this channel. With Meditation for Everyone, you will learn to quickly and easily meditate, relieve stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and have more joy, peace, and relaxation. What you will learn: mindfulness, the art of stillness, step by step on how to meditate, strategies for overcoming challenges to meditation, and much more. D. Mason said this is a nice meditation book, even for those already meditating. I agree with the statements that it will help to have a more peaceful, mindful, and fulfilled life. 4.6-star rating, available on Amazon. Is it possible to do emotional release on people that aren't even conscious that you're doing it for them? Or, I mean, can you be like in a public space and notice someone's in pain and just start working on them at a spiritual level?
Look, I think it's absolutely, I think as humans, wouldn't it be beautiful if we could all hold space for people's pain and just be, somehow reconciling that and making space for that in ourselves for them. I think that's something that we could all desire as human beings, as we learn how to have more spaciousness in ourselves, that we could see someone down the street. I think that's part of why I love to watch Humanity. I love to, see a dad walking down the street and feel into the load that he's carrying, the responsibility that he feels for his family, and, just actually hold space for that in my body. As far as working on anyone, I normally don't do it without people knowing that I'm doing it. And I have worked on my children without asking them, because they're so young. But I probably sit with people in public in a more compassionate sense and hold space for them in my body rather than do any work on them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in a sense, is it almost like a deep intercessory prayer as you're sort of connecting to God or the divine for them?
Yeah, if I'm just, in a public place and seeing someone, for sure, that would be definitely a beautiful way to describe it. I am incredibly deeply prayerful throughout my life. I've had my own experience of growing up in a Christian religion, and during that time, probably later on in my life, I've realized that many of the things that I experienced and was taught didn't necessarily align me with unconditional love, but more aligned me with showing up in life feeling ashamed in myself that I was doing the wrong thing. And after my brother died 6 years ago, I really started to sit in meditation and learn prayer in a different way. Prayer for me as a young person, I was taught to pray for things that we desired or longed for or thought were important. And as I grew up and became an adult, prayer for me was more sitting with God, the universe, whatever people, I think, if this is for other people, whatever it is that is powerful for you. For me, it doesn't even need to have a name. I just know that there is a divine sense of power that I sit with. And I just feel like that power is outside of me. It is inside of me. It is one and the same. It's not just present. It's behind me. It's in the future. It's through all time and space and dimension. And so when I sit in stillness, there's not a conscious asking or request in my prayers anymore. It's more of, just opening my heart to be seen, opening my heart to see, and this deep prayerful sense of help, perhaps longing to see, allow me to see. And, I used to pray that certain things would happen in my life or other people's lives. And now I just feel like the greater consciousness or our God or whatever you want to call it knows what is best for everyone, even though we can't see it sometimes. And so just sitting in stillness and connecting with that and trusting in that I don't even need to make a request. It's just, it is what it is. And that can be healing in itself.
So, do you work full time with people doing this?
Yeah, I would like to increase my hours with this. I also support a couple of people in our community who, one beautiful human I have taught Pilates to one-on-one for a long time, and another woman I support in the community, just holding space with her every week. And I also work with people online, and I also still teach Pilates. And I love that. I've been teaching this particular community for 10 years, so I still do that. But this is the part of my life and business that I really want to continue building. And I just haven't let go of. I used to teach Pilates 10 to 15 times a week. And now I only teach 2 classes, and they're communities that I just, I don't want to let the community go. They're so special.
Yeah, like when you talk about holding space with people, do you ever have times where you're like, a loved one comes to you or anyone comes to you and says, I'm having this problem, and then they go on to explain it. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but you kind of think, I don't know what to say to the person. I don't have a clue what to say. Is that a moment where you could just hold them, within and not necessarily have to say anything, or maybe it'll come later?
Yeah. Do you mean that they come to you in person or they come to you in a prayer?
Oh, no, like they're talking to you in person, like they're having
Yeah.
struggles and they're stressed and whatever. And it's like sometimes you kind of just like draw a blank, like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I think that's where the honest dialogue with myself has been really helpful, with being able to be okay with not knowing what to say. When I have honest dialogue with myself and myself says things to me that she needs or requests or is struggling with, and I don't know the answer. I don't know what to say to her. I don't know how to ease her pain. Then the same thing relates to when that happens in outside of myself. So when a friend comes to me and is really distressed or moving through something that's really difficult, often it's just holding space and really witnessing what they're moving through. And the power in the words that actually in our heads feel so uncomfortable is, I really see how difficult this is for you right now. And I don't know what to say, but I'm here and I love you. It's been so comforting to so many people. And I think I really learned that lesson after I lost a brother. I thought after going through that experience and really feeling that sense of grief and shock in my body at such a time in my life that was so confronting, I just never expected it. I would somehow be equipped then to deal with other people who lost their loved ones. And yet, I continue to find myself in these situations where I feel in my body that I really deeply understand not what they're going through, but I understand the experience from my experience. But I still don't have the words, It's still challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, there's no words to console someone's grief in a really shocking, unexpected experience. And so just showing up with love and offering whatever I can and being okay with that. I think we somehow feel like we need to know, and being okay that we don't know. We don't know how to console someone else's pain because sometimes we can't. That's what I've learned in the last few years. Absolutely.
So, what kind of projects are you working on?
That's a really great question. I've got a few on the go at the moment. One project that I'm working on is called 100 Women, and I'm bringing awareness to the brokenness and impact of childbirth on women's bodies and hearts, and what women go through when birth doesn't go the way that they had hoped. So I'm interviewing 100 women and recording that on Zoom to collect data and experiences of women and what they've been through to put into a book that I would like to write, and just help people to really understand some of the hidden things that women carry day to day as mothers, not just imminently after birth, but also years down the track when their children have grown and their bodies are still impacted by those birth experiences that they went through. So, I really welcome if any of your listeners have been through something like that and they still feel the impact of birth on their bodies, and doesn't matter how long ago, they're more than welcome to reach out to me and share their story if they'd like to be a part of that.
What's the easiest way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I can give you my email, so anyone can email me. And also I'm on Facebook as Prudence Todd. You can look me up on Facebook and just send me a personal message and I will respond.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put a link to the Facebook ad. So what would be like one final word you'd like to leave with the audience before we close out?
I think love yourself with a deep compassion. And if you don't know how, reach out to someone and learn it, because it is the most beautiful tool to carry you through life. I was talking with a friend yesterday and she said the words, I was actually struggling in myself around something that I'm working through at the moment. And she said, Prue, you have such a strength in your gentleness, and your strength is so, there's a gentleness in your strength and a strength in your gentleness. And I know that that comes from learning how to be compassionate to myself. And that has gifted me the ability to be deeply compassionate with other people. And it's the way that we heal ourselves and bring connection to our lives and connection to other people in our lives. And we can discover connections that are right there in front of us, people that are right in front of us, and we just actually don't see them, or we don't see the ability to connect to them, or there's something in the way. But when we learn how to be compassionate to our own experiences in life through loving ourselves, it opens up portals to places that we just could never imagine. So if anyone feels that they need support in this, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's been really, really lovely to share. Thank you for the opportunity.